Hello everyone and welcome to Halogen 7a. Today we are going to talk about why most of the scientists we know are Western. I'll be referring to Pascal's triangle. Or is it? Is it actually Pascal's triangle? Let's take a look at the different versions of Pascal's triangle. Ömer Hayyam was a Muslim Persian scholar. He was fond of literature, especially poems, astronomy and mathematics. Even though he was born in Nishapur as a Persian in 10,048, he grew up under the Seljuk Turks' rule. The Seljuk ruler Tuğrul Bey entered Nishapur in 10,038 and made it the capital of the empire. Growing up under the control of a military state was not easy for Ömer Hayyam. He described the difficulties he had during the Seljuk Turks' occupation of Persia in his book called Treatise on Demonstration of Problems of Algebra. I was unable to devote myself to the learning of this algebra and the continued concentration upon it, because of obstacles in the vagaries of time which hindered me. For we have been deprived of all the people of knowledge, save for a group, small in number, with many troubles, whose concern in life is to snatch the opportunity, when time is asleep, to devote themselves meanwhile to the investigation and perfection of a science. However, despite the difficulties he had, he wrote a book called Problems of Arithmetic. In the following years of Seljuk Empire, the ruler Melik Shah and his vizier Nizam al-Mulk maintained the peace and opened universities where scholars like Ömer Hayyam can continue their studies. Melik Shah was more of a bureaucratic ruler compared to the previous rulers of the empire. Now that facilities like libraries and observatories are granted to the scholars of the empire, Ömer Hayyam can study even more. For example, he calculated 1 year to be 365.242198588156. This calculation has a percentage error of 0.0000002%. He also continued his work on algebra. As seen from the problems he considered, his approach to the mathematical problems involves geometry. If you did not understand how these problems involve geometry, you can check the meanings of the mathematical terms used in these problems. You will realize that most of them are related to geometry. And that's how Hayyam established his binomial theorem, through geometry. Hayyam's method is to expand, say, a plus b squared with an expression where there is a square divided into other squares and rectangles. If we increase the power of a plus b and expand it using this method, a symmetrical triangle will appear. The binomial coefficients are expanded from its expression to form a symmetrical triangle, which is named as Pascal's triangle or usually called as Hayyam's triangle in Iran. A similar triangle has been established by a Chinese mathematician called Yang Hui, who lived in the Song dynasty in the early 14th century. He also worked on magic squares and magic circles. When I look at magic circles and magic squares, I feel that Yang Hui was inspired by these unique mathematical patterns to establish his triangle. A magic square is a grid. There are 9 squares on a 3 by 3 grid, and the whole magic square can be filled with numbers ranging from 1 to 9. So if there is a grid of n by n, then the maximum number on that grid can be n square. The most basic and simple magic square, which is called order 3, has a pattern that every row, column, and diagonal adds up to 15. When you look at the horizontal sums of Pascal's triangle, you will see that those sums double each time when you go one row down. Therefore, it represents the power of 2. From here, I conclude that patterns were Yang Hui's method, as well as geometry was Ömer Hayyam's method to solve mathematical problems. There is also an Indian version of this triangle which I have not mentioned. I assume that the Indian mathematicians had a different approach towards this triangle, as well as Ömer Hayyam and Yang Hui. I do not believe that the answer lies under the methods of how mathematicians established this triangle. I think it is related to how modern science emerged from the West, because we have these different methods from different nations. But why is it named after Blaise Pascal, who established this triangle after other mathematicians? For your information, he did that in the 17th century, the Age of Reason. The Age of Enlightenment, or the Age of Reason, began in 1686. when Newton published his famous book, Mathematical Principles of Natural Philosophy. He also invented a mathematical phenomenon that we know as calculus. Along with scientific and mathematical advancements in the Age of Reason, philosophy was not left behind. Immanuel Kant, who was a German philosopher famous for his moral theory, summarizes the Age of Enlightenment in his essay, What is Enlightenment? Dare to know. Have courage to use your own reason. French philosophers like John Locke began to think of new systems of government where state and church are separated. This is called laïcism, and it is still present in today's France. These series of events led to the French Revolution, 1789. The vision of overthrowing the old authorities and reconstruct the society along rational lines resulted in groups like Freemasons. After this major historical event, the contemporary age has begun. As a result, intellectuals in the Western world had more opportunities to make research. Western scientists picked up a momentum that will continue despite the world wars. Actually, scientists played major roles in world wars. For example, Fritz Haber, who is called the father of chemical warfare, offered his knowledge on the toxin chlorine gas to the German army. Today, we know that halogens are highly reactive and they can be harmful or lethal to biological organisms in sufficient quantities. In April of 1915, this toxic gas was used against the French army. His achievement on such a frightening weapon led to his wife's suicide, and others condemned him. However, he won a Nobel Prize on his Haber-Bosch process, which fixes nitrogen with hydrogen from the air to produce ammonia, and ammonia can be used in fertilizers. Speaking of Nobel Prizes, Nobel Prize is the most prestigious award a scientist can get. Most of the countries that got the most Nobel Prizes are Western. Only Japan, Australia, and Israel could make it to the top tier list as a non-Western country. After these major historical events, scientists from the Western world become more globally recognized and made their place on our textbooks. We still commemorate the accomplishments of the other scientists like Ömer Hayyam and Yang Hui. However, their accomplishments are treated as historical elements, not as scientific discoveries. Another thing that is globally recognized is the formality of scientific studies. Those scientific studies had to be reviewed by a higher authority to be taken seriously. It was Max Planck who realized the genius, Albert Einstein. Einstein published paper after paper but was not taken seriously. At first, even Max Planck himself was shocked by how an ordinary man like Einstein, who worked in a patent office, could defy Sir Isaac Newton. Then Einstein earned a reputation that still lasts even today. All in all, there was a system on how scientific discoveries were made. And since other nations did not have that kind of system, they did not have any other chance but to just become westernized. Nobel Prize is a great example of this system, which is now a system that runs in the entire world. In short, the answer to our question, why are Western scientists more famous, is that scientists of the Western world were more independent and thus more influential compared to other scientists, took part in major historical events, and had a system where a higher authority can allow them to be recognized. This westernization is not just in science, but in culture as well. Today, when someone says formality, we imagine a man wearing a suit and a tie. Cultural and scientific influence from the West is still a thing, but not as much as before. As our world becomes more globalized every day, we become more open-minded, or should I say international-minded. As we become more open-minded and international-minded, we are urged to question more. And I hope it continues like that until the end of humanity. Thank you for watching my video. I hope you liked it. If I made any mistakes, please use the comment section and criticize politely. If you have any question on your mind, you can share it with us. And let me remind you that there are no stupid questions. Thank you for watching.